Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's all right. This is a good time to study more and more and improve the skills. And let's pray that everyone remains all right. I made this study. Actually, there is nothing called a study painting. If the goal is clear and the painting represents that, then I guess every painting is a good painting. Now I'm working on a used panel. I didn't like the earlier picture, so I'm using that for this purpose. I am using cobalt blue and burnt sienna to do the basic drawing. You can see I'm just indicating what goes where. Now for the block-in, I'm using cobalt blue mixed with white on the left hand side very thickly, and a mix of yellow ochre and white on the right hand side, and left the top right hand corner completely white so that it indicates that the light comes from there. So covering the areas very quickly. Now I'm covering the ground area too. This painting took me about 2.5 hours to finish. This would be like a bigger plein air painting. No details whatsoever, just covering the areas and defining the values, shapes, and color temperature as accurately as possible. To create a successful realistic painting, one must have at least this much knowledge. The values, the degree of lightness and darkness, the shapes, the correct shapes, and the distances between those shapes, and the temperature, the how cool or how warm a section is. So here I'm working on the lower section of the painting, just determining what to put there, blending some edges. I'm also adding some cadmium orange on in the sky, just to indicate that there is some warmth there. It's not just yellow ochre. And gradually I'll be covering the whole area and bring it in to the cooler area as well. Just a little cloud patterns, abstract shapes. Here I'm doing that. The values are a big problem to many. The easiest way to deal with this problem while doing a landscape painting is to start with the objects that are farthest from us, like the sky and distant foliage, and gradually increase the saturation and contrast while moving towards the front section. The things that are farthest from us will be cooler and lighter. The things that are closest to us will be darker and warmer. Obviously, there are some situations when this may not hold true, but this works in most cases. But the idea is to practice more and more and think while doing it. Why are you doing that? Here I'm using a palette knife to cover the areas and create some sort of a flatness, adding more paint, more and more paint. Here I'm using a bigger brush. It's a good practice to paint with bigger brushes that help to loosen up, as well as makes one understand the value of suggestivity. It is the same reason why we feel amazed while looking at a masterwork. When we get up close to a masterwork, we see nothing except the brushwork and paint. I read somewhere that what a master can achieve with a broomstick, a student can't with the most expensive tools. Here I'm adding a bit more light to the bottom section of the painting. It was darker because it was just wet clay and some trees grown over those. So this is very abstract actually. Random shapes, just an interplay between light and shadow. I use big brushes to define the basic shapes, and the stray hairs of a bristle brush create a naturally blended edge. So this helps in doing the trees. Again, I'm using the big brush to create the distant foliage there, working on the tree as well as some smaller shapes here and there. The randomness that is created by a big brush is second to none, I guess. Now I'm again using a palette knife to flatten the areas, while also using the sides to scrape and create abstraction naturally. Scraping paint as well as putting it, dragging some paint with the palette knife, creating straight lines. Here I'm using a round brush to create the shadows with a mix of black as well as brown. So accentuating the darker areas. And the round brushes can be rolled with ease as it carries paint in all the sides. I'm using a middle of the brush grip and rolling it as it carries the paint in all the sides. Accentuating here and there wherever the paint needs to be, the color needs to be actually the darker. Now I'm using a flat brush to indicate the lighter areas in a similar fashion. Accentuating the lighter areas as well. Now I'm working on the distant areas and making them cooler with more white and a slight amount of blue. The dagger brushes are particularly useful for edge work and making it cooler. This is a morning scene actually, so the light was very cool. This is the early autumn, so things are a bit cooler. You're working with a round brush, working on some heaps of clay that were there. I saw the scene from the train while journeying from my home to the place where I live. That is also my home. So this was very beautiful scene. Now at this stage, I wasn't too happy with the tree shape, so I later scraped it off and started reworking with a fan brush. The fans are great for foliage if you use the sides, the edges. They create kind of a natural abstraction that are needed in the trees. You're adjusting some areas as well. But the fans are really great for the trees. So this is the shot of the final painting. It has the coolness as well as the warmth of early spring, and I'm satisfied with the result. Looks pretty cool for a 2.5 hour painting. So if you like this video, then hit the like button and also subscribe for upcoming videos. Take care and stay safe.